I think it's important to underscore that the concept of a federal program that would bring to the attention of the American people that chapter in our history known as the Underground Railroad required the support of a vast network of individuals and organizations to emphasize to members of Congress, to emphasize to the administration at that time, and to emphasize to the American people that this is a significant chapter in our history. It should be told because it offers lessons that could help us to address contemporary concerns. So that resulted in Congress passing a bill signed into law by President Bill Clinton, I believe in July 21, 1998, authorizing the National Underground Railroad Network to freedom. And that program got underway during my tenure as the director of the National Park Service. So we are now in the 25th year of carrying out the letter and the spirit of that act. Seemingly there in some organizations or some corners of our society, people say that, well, really didn't exist. It was just sort of a myth, if you will, that somebody was helping people to move from an enslaved condition to a breath of freedom. And some say, well, it was a white thing helping black folks. And that was just sort of a narrower spectrum of who was involved. And so there had to be a scholarly approach, that there is some factual information here that can illustrate that there were people from all walks of life that were engaged and committed, helping their enslaved brethren and sisters move towards a breath of freedom.
Let's take Josiah Henson. We're in his home. He's born in Charles County. That's one. Then he has to come to Rockville. That's two. I'm talking Rockville Center. Then here, that's three. Then he goes to Kentucky. That's four. And he's traveling. So let's just say there's land in between. That's five. From Kentucky, he goes to New Orleans. That's six. From New Orleans, he comes back, and then he decides to escape. He has a route. That's 7, 8, 9, and 10. He then is in Canada. He moves in Canada. All right, that's 11 and 12. And then he comes back on the Underground Railroad. There are 15 different points of intersection, at least, in this one man's life. And with the Network to Freedom, its real contribution is to look at all of these disparate places and say, we cannot understand this story from one location. Rarely can we understand the story from one narrator. We can find aspects of the story in newspapers, aspects of the story in these church histories, aspects of the story in your grandfather's or grandmother's reminiscences, but that we cannot know fully the entire story.
Former plantation homes like this one actually saw a specific audience for many years, and now we are trying to transform and make sure that we tell our public we are a place for everyone. Everyone needs to see themselves here and feel a sense of belonging. We are a museum that's going through a transformation, and we're decentering the story of the white slaveholding family, but making sure that we share that space. We're not erasing, we are actually adding to and enhancing the stories of the enslaved. So we want to make sure that we're telling the voices of individuals who typically don't get to see the light of day in the narratives that we tell, whether that be through our exhibitions, through our tours, our public programming. We just want to give them credence because they would have been the overwhelming majority here. For me, the 25th anniversary of the Network to Freedom, for me, I hope that we can bring Riversdale in a more prominent way than we had in the past. Like, we're a National Historic Landmark, but we're also a Network to Freedom site. How do we build that out in terms of prominence and connecting? Are we going to be doing programming every September for International Underground Railroad Month? Are we going to collaborate with other sites like ours across the state to do programming? That's my hope, is that we continue to build and actually highlight it. And it's not just a tick mark on our list of things that we are, but it's something that we actually grapple with and we deal with and we celebrate here at Riversdale as a part of our overall interpretation.
This building, this place, this space, this is the Stephen and Harriet Myers Historic Site. It's on the Network to Freedom. It's a site where Stephen Myers and his wife Harriet and their 4 children lived in the mid 1850s, 1855, 6, 7, right in there. When they lived here, they did what they probably had been doing, well, definitely been doing since about 1830, which was helping people with food, clothing, shelter, and transportation assistance and refuge in connection with the Underground Railroad. People who were fleeing from enslavement and seeking help here in the city of Albany.
One of the things that we were able to do because of funding available through the National Park Service Network to Freedom was to place both to restore the back entryway of the first floor of the Myers residence, and in doing that, also add a lift to the back entryway. Network to Freedom has helped us along the way with various funding contributions. Yeah. Paul mentioned the historic structures report. We talked about the lift in the back, for instance. I'm sure there are other things, and
there's at least one other something.
So I think Network to Freedom has been very, very instrumental, and it also meant for us here in New York State that as other communities were researching their Underground Railroad history connections, by becoming part of the Network to Freedom, not only did we have our own on-the-ground conversations, but we also had these conversations then able to blossom, if you will, by coming together at Network to Freedom conferences and through grant funding that would allow us to come together as a small group, for instance. And so there was just a lot of synergy and a lot of opportunities to have a foundation that in Network to Freedom that was saying what we're doing is valid and important, right. and yet there was also room to open the doors for, other things to happen through the Network to Freedom.
We are in the exhibit space at the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad Visitor Center in the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad State Park on the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad, All-American Road Byway, and headquarters to the National Park Service's Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad National Historical Park in Maryland. So, and of course, home to the headquarters of the National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom program. So this is really a place that's a vortex of Underground Railroad knowledge and energy. That the Tubman Visitor Center and the Tubman Byway, both members of the Network to Freedom, can be a model that others around the country can emulate is really important to us, because our knowledge, if we contain it here, only goes so far. And so if there are other entities out there that want to hear from us on how we did this, call us, email us, ask us. We want to share our information with you. We're stronger together as the network continues to grow around the country and hopefully internationally here soon. And we want to make sure that everybody knows that we are a resource, and obviously we're willing to talk if people want to ask us to share what we know.
I started my career right about the same time that the National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom was established back in 1998. So I've seen the network grow from a handful of sites to a true network. And really what this program does is it makes the world, especially in the 19th century, a lot smaller. You're able to find connections between freedom seekers, between abolitionists, between the folks who helped them. And the documenting these histories helps us to contribute to a more inclusive commemorative landscape. The National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom allows us to explore the stories and narratives of all freedom seekers and those who assisted them. The exciting thing is we're still learning so much. We're still adding new sites. We're still adding new stories and learning new stories every single year. With 25 years of the Network to Freedom operating, we're looking forward to the next 25 years and the stories that we can uncover and the sites that we can add to the network to be able to tell a more complete and accurate story.